Hi, this is Andrew with craftybeetroot.com. Welcome back to the workshop. Today we're talking a little bit about waxed cotton. For those of you that have seen my Adam Savage EDC1 build, you probably heard me going on and on and on and on and on about how great waxed cotton is. Today I want to go into detail a little bit more about how to make the waxed cotton. I know in that video I touched on it and I showed a little bit of the process. Today I want to just delve right in and show you how to do it. Today I'm going to make another one of these bags, except I'm going to make it for my daughter. So you may have noticed the pink back here. She needed a bag for ballet, so I thought, perfect, another opportunity to work with some waxed cotton. And I do love this bag, I do love the design of it, but unfortunately military green is not really her forte, so we're going to do pink. The first thing I've been doing is I've been collecting wax. So I picked up this cheap candle, I've got some other wax left over from previous projects, and so we're just going to melt that down. Now that we're getting to the end here, I want to point out that I'm using a paraffin-based wax. All of my wax is the same. This is just a cheap candle I picked up at the local store, plus some leftover wax. The trick is you want to get it all melted so that you can apply it easily. Alright, we're back out here into the workshop. We've got our wax, that's all melted. We've got our cheap paintbrush. You want to use just a cheap brush, you don't want to use anything nice and fancy because it's going to have wax in it. And obviously once you've done wax of it, it's not going to be good to much else. So now what you're going to do is you're basically going to just paint it on the fabric. In this case I've actually pre-cut the fabric. In previous cases I haven't done that. The nice thing is that if you've got it all on one big piece of fabric, you can cut it all out and it's very easy to cut. However, I wanted to maximize the use of my wax and minimize the wastage, so I cut it all out first. And basically when you do your first one, you want it to basically become soaking wet like that. Now as you're applying this, you want to make sure you're very liberal with it. You'll see why next. And the other thing you want to do is you want to remember that this is soaking through the canvas. So keep going until the full piece of fabric looks wet. That's a #1 indicator that you've got good coverage and that it's all been absorbed into the fabric. So you've got to think about what kind of fabric you want to use for this process. I've done a little bit of experimenting with some different fabrics, and what it comes down to is you really want something that's got a little bit of thickness to it. I like to use a natural fiber. The reason why you want to use a natural fiber, in my experience, is that that fiber absorbs up the wax. Because basically what you're trying to do is get that fabric like a net, and when it absorbs, the gaps get smaller, and the wax is naturally hydrophobic. So after it's cooled down, this is what you want it to kind of look like. It's going to almost feel like cardboard. You can see that there's wax on there, and obviously we don't use it in this form. And that will take us to step 2. So after it's cooled off, and as you can see it's kind of got crispy, that's when you want to lay it out again. And it's very important that you lay this out on an absorbent material, so you can really see and get a sense of scale how much wax you need to do a small amount. You don't really need very much, and you can get it to spread out. There's not really a lot of equipment that you need to do this. Obviously you need some way of melting the wax. A hot stove and a saucepan is all you need for that, and a brush to paint it on. The main resources that you need apart from the wax and the fabric is an absorbent material. I like using cardboard. Paper works as well. You just want something that's going to absorb that wax. And the other thing you need is a heat gun. The heat gun is critical to this because now what we're going to do is we're going to heat up this wax again and basically get rid of the excess. Anything where you can actually see the wax standing, you want to get rid of, and you want it to look dry. So what we're going to do now is we're going to now heat it up, and the process and what you're looking for is you want to melt anything that's white, you want it to go wet, and then you want it to look dry. It's going to look like the wax has gone away, but what it's done is it's absorbed into the fabric and the excess has been absorbed into the back of it. Sometimes it takes a few goes for it to be completely absorbed and be able to be ready to be used. but you kind of just stick going with it and go over and over. So you can really start to see this in action now. You can see the white, you can see how it looks wet, and you can see how it looks dry. That's actually still waxed, but it just has gone to that point. It's not oversaturated anymore. And this highlights why you need to use a natural fabric. Obviously, if this was a synthetic, it would start to melt and it would just be nasty. So you can kind of see here that I didn't get perfect coverage when I first went in. This was the bit that I did right at the end as we were starting to run out. As you can see, the biggest issue with this process is the time involved. You need the time to melt the wax, to apply the wax, and then to go through and heat it. But you get an awesome fabric at the end of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and knock out the rest of this, and we'll show you what it's like when it's done. So you can see here, this is where the time is. This is where you spend majority of your time, is that just going over it and going over it. And you can see all those dark marks on the cardboard about how much wax is actually going into the fabric and how much you actually need. So you end up doing way more on the fabric than you need, but it's the only way you get a good coverage. You could see a little bit on that black fabric that you just weren't getting that full coverage because I was right at the end and trying to stretch it. And basically what you're looking for at the end is you want a nice, crisp looking fabric like that, but you don't want to see any kind of marks like that. And you can see that you get a mark like this, you just hit it with the heat gun, and it just immediately absorbs in. And once that sets up again, you're ready to go. Now, with waxed fabric, you will know that once you kind of bend it, you will get marks, but that's just part of the aesthetic of the fabric. And that's pretty well it. If it's still looking not quite how you want it, you can just go back over and over again. And you'll notice that once the fabric is where you want it, you can heat it up as much as you want. So if we come along here, and this is a piece of one that's almost done, we can heat that up quite substantially, and we see that there's not much now left. And you can keep doing this over and over again, but you want to basically have it so that there's nothing left to absorb onto the paper. And then after that, it's pretty much just business as usual. You work the fabric like you would any other fabric. It's just nicer, it doesn't fray. You can get really nice crisp creases when you're doing sewing. Obviously you don't want to iron it, that could lead to bad things. But all that's left now is to make the bag. As you can see, it came out pretty good. Wax cotton just has this quality to it that just makes it look much more timeless. Gives it this kind of quality, worn look to it, kind of military, but it looks really good in the pink too, if you can see it compared to my t-shirt. So when sewing it, it's really quite easy to sew. You can just use a regular sewing machine. You can actually get quite thick. Doing some of these little features here, you're going through about 6 or 7 layers of fabric, and the wax cotton seems to make it easier. I love this fabric, and that's why I kind of wanted to show you how to make this fabric, because it's just so much fun, it's so easy to make, and you get something really unique and kind of one-off if you make it. If you're interested in how I made this bag, I've got a full video showing the process I made for this one, and I used the exact same process. If you're interested in more builds like this, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, or check out craftybeetroot.com. Thank you.